What's up, y'all? Welcome to the Tremain Show. I'm Tremain Davis. This is another Tremain Dawn edition of the show. All right, today we're talking about Fundraising 102. Now, if you're wondering what Fundraising 102 is and not Fundraising 101, we about to explain it to you.
That's right.
All right, Don, what is Fundraising 102? Break it down for the people.
All right, so if you go to any accelerator, if you go to any program, right, they'll teach you some basic kind of steps for basic fundraising. That's 101. Those basic steps include putting together a spreadsheet, having a list of all of the VCs in your space, getting warm introductions, having meetings. You're looking for something like a 5% hit rate. And that's all good and well, and you must know that process.
Things you need.
All things you need to understand.
Right.
But as Black founders, as women founders, as underrepresented founders, that process tends to take on some other elements, right? The reality of who is closing checks. Many people aren't closing checks from that process alone. It takes a little bit more, and that's what we're going to get into today.
Sounds perfect. All right, Fundraising 102 is something that you, as a founder, are probably very experienced at, because all of those nuances that you mentioned about being a Black founder, a Black woman founder, et cetera, are things that you've had to go through.
Sure, both of
All
us.
right, so yes, both of us, of course. All right, so just to manage the perspective, give us a 30-second background of your business and what you've had to go through.
Sure.
From the Fundraising 102 standpoint.
Sure. So I run a tech-enabled company, a company that leverages tech-enabled products and brings those engineers those products, manufactures those products, and brings them to market. This is a very high cost of entry area, right? So there are huge barriers to entry. Manufacturing is not cheap. It's very expensive. And you almost have to fundraise to enter into this space. I think one of the things that has gotten me by was being all in the beginning. So, for example, I liquidated all of my assets, including my multi-unit revenue generating home. I liquidated my 401k. I put all of that into the company in the beginning to get to MVP stage, and I'm sure your viewers kind of know what MVP is by this time.
Minimum viable
product, yep. Right? So not a commercially viable product that I can actually take to market, but something that shows the functionality that I can demonstrate on customers, where I can get people to do pre-sales, some indication, where I can get some indication that there in fact is a need for that thing. And then we go after the venture dollars. And so one of the things that you have to know is that for products and for concepts that are focused on the needs of niches, those products tend not to be as obvious to investors. And quite frankly, there tends to be a lot less care until you can demonstrate the demand, right? And so often you've got to demonstrate the demand on your own, with your own money, with your own funds, either working on your company on the side, or liquidating assets so that you can invest into that company and get the ball rolling. But one way or another, one of the biggest hacks in this space is being all in and getting to a place where you already have demonstrable demand that investors can latch onto.
Got it. All right, so that's been your personal experience.
Yes.
Like, you've had to go through that space. All right, so let's pan back a little bit, because if it's not an industry specific thing, give me one of the main pieces of Fundraising 102 that any high growth founder could be thinking about.
Okay, so often, and we've seen this, because we both taught classes and taught seminars, and as soon as you ask people how much money they're raising, everyone across the board says, I'm raising $1 million, right? And the reality is, you don't need $1 million to get from point A to point B.
Absolutely.
Right? And
absolutely.
So it's really important for folks to understand that this is an iterative process. Rather than going from 0 to 100, it'd be great if you can just come out of the bat and raise $1 mil, raise $2 mil, raise $3 mil. That's great. But the reality is that tends not to happen for folks in our demographic. So we need to be clear on what gets us from point A to point Z, and get clear on the points that gets you to B and to C and to D in the interim. Those points don't always require $1 million. It can be really difficult to walk into a room with a concept that people aren't familiar with, particularly if you are a new founder who doesn't kind of have the credentials and the bona fides. It's very difficult to get people to open up their pockets and say, here's $1 million.
True.
But it's a lot easier to say, I need $25,000 to get a website up and running, file my first patent, and hire an intern, or whatever it is, right? Whatever those key things are that get you to your next milestone. So to synopsize, break it down into small, very digestible parts, and fundraise until you have the traction and the notoriety and the bona fides and the demand to be able to go into a room and say, hey, we've got X, Y, and Z, we've got a foundation, now we're raising to get to this next kind of growth point. In the interim, think of those small chunks, the 25K, the 5K, the 10K, and where that gets you. You can get that 5K, that 10K, that 25K at a pitch competition or an accelerator or from angel investors. That doesn't necessarily have to come from venture, right? So sometimes we do two things at the same time. We're still going after those venture investors. We're still attacking this from the 101 perspective, with the spreadsheet, with the warm introductions, with the meetings. And also, we should be going after those smaller checks that get us the traction that will get us to a yes with those venture investors when we are ready.
So what I like about what you said is that you're working and raising at the same time.
Absolutely.
Because I think that a lot of times when people think about, all right, I'm raising money, you know, they think that like it's this big grand, like it's this thing that you're accomplishing. Like, we're raising money, we're raising $1 million, we're raising whatever that amount is, and that is not really how it looks in reality. In reality, you are working and raising at the same time consistently.
Yeah.
And, you know, specifically, you know, you talked about the sort of issues or struggles, if you will, that Black and brown founders can encounter trying to go through this process. It's even more fundamental to think that way.
Yeah.
Because, you know, unless you have the new, you know, nanotechnology that's going to whatever, you know, most Black and brown founders are going to have to do it this way.
That's right.
You know, they're going to have to be working to prove their concept as they're raising money.
That's right.
So that $25,000 has to go a lot longer and a lot further, that $50,000 check. But again, that makes you even more efficient as a founder, you know, because if you're thinking, okay, I'm talking to an investor, I want them to give me $50,000, and you can say, all right, with this 50K, I'm doing this, this, and this to get here, you know, which allows me to now talk to a bigger check writing investor.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying? So the incremental thought process is definitely a 102 strategy, you know? So, all right, so tell me how
before we go to where you're going, let's pause on that. Let's double click. You said this process makes you a more efficient founder. And it's really important to keep a positive mindset. We talked about, have we talked about some of the statistics in fundraising? Very briefly, we can talk about the 1% of venture funding going to Black founders. We can talk about the 0.0006% of venture funding that goes to Black women founders. We can talk about the 2% of venture funding that goes to women founders, right? Those are really discouraging statistics, and they're statistics that you have to know. And also, we always have to find the silver lining and find how to turn these disadvantages into our own advantages. And the point you made is gold. It is unfair that Black and brown founders are treated the way that they are in the space. And also, it is a massive opportunity to be better. I am absolutely a better founder because I raised in smaller tranches and because I had to figure out how to make that money work for me. Now, when you give me $1 million, magic happens, right?
Magic happens.
But we can't guarantee that that magic would have happened if 10 years ago when I started down this road, if you would give me that $1 million, would I really have known what to do with it? That's why another statistic for you, something like 90+% of startups fail. That's part of the reason. We're giving people goo gobs of money and they don't actually know what to do with it. That doesn't happen with us. We know what to do with it.
So that's really good. And so here's the thing about that is that if so I want you guys to take this away, because money is not the end all be all. Like, you know, when you're starting a company, of course you need money. Of course. You know, most founders, as they get started, are resource constrained. They don't have a lot of money, time, et cetera, et cetera. They're working a 9 to 5. This is their 10, you know, there's 6 to 10. And so, like, you know, it's always going to be a constraint on the things that you have, like, right now available to get this thing done. My thing is that you have to lean into that. That's my 102. My 102 is lean into that. Like, that is probably one of the most resourceful spaces for a founder to be in. To figure out how to get a product to market with lint in your pocket. You know what I mean? And to your point, you know, if you build a muscle doing that along the way, once you do get that $1 million check, you know, you're much better off doing that. I mean, I've run into, and we both coached teams before, who'll get money, and you know, next thing you know, that money is gone. It's like, what did you do with $800,000? Like, you have how much in the bank right now? Like, you $32,000 in the bank?
Right.
What happened?
Right.
So yeah, all right. So very good first way to start investing in 102. All right, give me one more.
I just had it.
Oh my god!
And it just went out of my brain. It was such a good one.
Okay, I'll start. I'll go to the next one. I'll go to the next one. All right. For me, investing 102 is understanding that getting venture investment is a marathon, not a sprint. So just because an investor says no today doesn't mean that they will not say no, say yes 2 years from now, 3 years from now. So we talked about the warm introductions for Venture 101. What we don't talk about a lot of times is how to cultivate those relationships over time. So those people, when they first get that introduction to who you are, even if it's a warm introduction, they still don't know who you are. And they're making decisions based on things that, to be quite honest, aren't the meat and potatoes. You know what I mean? Like, they just met you through somebody else. Okay, that's how you got the meeting. But they may know very little about your space, meaning the venture capitalist or the investor may know very little about your space. They know very little about you, you know, but because so-and-so knows you, they will take the meeting. You know, do not expect that you'll get checks out of these meetings all the time. But that's not a negative. You know, now you have to cultivate that relationship. This is where it becomes really cool to send out your 6-month newsletter. Like, these types of things, people don't understand, like, those are Trojan horses that you can be dropping in. Like, if that investor hears from you every quarter, twice a year or something, as you're building out these milestones, that makes them now want to come back to you and invest the second or third time around. And so, you know, marathon, not a sprint is another, you know, I think 102 principle when it comes to raising venture money. And
a corollary to that, and also the thing that I was going to say before it went out of my head. So it's resources, it's people power, right? And you know, our superpower may not be going out and raising and getting $5 million checks, right? But getting people behind you, getting people behind you who know what they're doing, getting people behind you who are willing to put in some sweat equity, right? That's massive. So one of the hacks, this goes back to what you just said, you start to cultivate these relationships with people, and maybe you don't ask them for money straight out the gate. Or maybe you ask them for money, they say no, and you say, hey, cool, can I reach out to you for advisory help, right? And when you reach out to them for advisory help, you ask for things, right? You say very concretely, I really need help getting this introduction into P&G. Can you help me? And those little things that people don't mind biting off, right? It's not a huge investment of time. It's just a little investment of their social capital, right? That gives them an opportunity to get bought in to what you're doing, right? So a lot of this is, again, you don't always need the $1 million. You need the things that the $1 million buys. The things that the $1 million buys might be marketing expertise, might be manpower, might be a TV spot. Who knows what that is? But you don't always need money to do that.
So wait a minute, you gotta stop there. This is so good. All right, so you don't need the $1 million. You need what the $1 million can buy for you.
That's right.
But here's the thing. This is a 102 hack. The people that you're talking to may have access to the thing you need without having to pay money.
Precisely.
You see what I'm saying? So I love that right there. So that's good. That's good. Okay, please continue. Please continue.
That's the crux. It's the people power behind you.
Right.
And sometimes you are using the people power for muscle. I need somebody to get me that introduction. I need somebody to come in and do my books for me. I don't know what it is. Or you can think about it a different way. I need somebody whose name I can use or whose face I can leverage, right? There's certain people in the ecosystem who may just not be able to do a whole lot for you, but there's a certain prestige that comes with being associated with that person. There is also value in leveraging that person's name, leveraging that person's face, getting that person to just sit next to you on a call, right? Doesn't cost them a thing, but it adds value to your company.
Yeah.
And it's another opportunity to build those relationships. They can see you at work. They can see your negotiating skills. They can see how clear you are about your business fundamentals. And eventually that relationship, that freebie, that very easy lift can very easily turn into a check down the line.
All right, so you have actually done what you just described.
Yeah.
Dawn has just done this, and so I want you to give a really specific example so that we can contextualize what we're talking about. So hold on, I got one. I want you to use one specific one. So everybody knows this person. All right, as much as you can say.
Sure.
All right, so in case you guys don't know, Dawn has gone on Shark Tank, swam with the sharks, as they say, and she's got an investment from Mark Cuban and Emma. Is it Grade A?
Emma Greed.
I thought it was Grade A. I'm horrible. Greed. Emma Greed. Please don't. If you watch this, Emma, please. All right. So having somebody like Mark Cuban and Emma Greed, and if you guys don't know who she is, she's the she's the Kardashians' business partner. How have you leveraged the relationship that you have now with a Mark Cuban into some of the things that we're talking about 102 investing, which is like, it costs nothing for Mark Cuban to send a video, show up to something, these types of things. How have you leveraged that to contextualize this conversation?
Yeah, so I'll tell you that Mark Cuban, you have to get really close to him, and he really needs to see you work over time before he's willing to open up his Rolodex and get his friends to write checks, right? So we've only been in business together for the past 8 months. So he still needs time to get to know me and to see what he's invested in a hair tech company. He doesn't even understand what he invested in.
What he's talking about,
right? He invested in me, and he wants to see what I can do. He's still seeing that. But what I can do is, for example, I'm in the middle of a fundraise right now, and as a part of that fundraise, I did a series of either virtual or in-person fundraising presentations. And I had Mark send a video, very quick. I think it's 15 or 20 seconds, where he's just, basically espousing his support for me. And we play that on the screen to kick things off, and it immediately gets people thinking the way that we want them to think, right? So a big part of these fundraising activations is momentum and how you set the tone. And if you know coming out the gate that for example, I run a beauty company, I'm in CPG, I'm in hardware and tech-enabled product, all of those things are strikes against me. Those are not things that investors enjoy investing in. It's harder, they don't know the space, they don't love the space, right? And so we've got to do some work to maneuver the energy in those rooms and make sure that we're starting out with the right tone and we're building up the right kind of momentum. Starting off those fundraising meetings with Mark Cuban saying how great I am is a really great way to get a bunch of white male investors who have no idea what I'm talking about. If he's interested, then maybe I should be interested too.
Absolutely. All right, so that was awesome. But I think that gives some real context to what we're talking about right now. If you're going out for any kind of venture funding, any kind of funding really, even if you're talking about angel investors, if you're talking about the venture capitalists, that type of thing, the whole idea is that you have to build these relationships.
Absolutely.
And money is not the end all be all. I think the 102, the difference between 101 and 102 when it comes to raising money is that you realize that money is not the thing. I think that's the evolution of the thought process from a 101 thinking person that needs money to a 102 person that needs money. I think the big takeaway is that you realize that money is just a tool.
Absolutely.
And the thing that you need, you said it so well earlier, the thing that you need doesn't necessarily mean money. You know, you can get that another kind of way. And this lends to your resourcefulness, the efficient use of your time and resources, et cetera, et cetera. All right, close us out. Give somebody out there is like, listen, I want to raise money. You know, I need to figure out what I need to do. I'm in the 101. People give me warm introductions. I've been talking to people. I need to move to the 102 so I can actually get people to write me checks.
Okay.
What would you tell them?
We're actually going to rewind.
Okay.
And we're going to go to 100. Fundraising 100. So
we're going
101. This is before you get to
this is pre-calculus.
That's right.
Pre-calculus.
That's right. So before you get to the spreadsheets, the warm introductions, before you get to thinking like a underrepresented founder and how you kind of make the space work for you, before you do that, you've got to have enough funds to just have something to pitch in the first place, right? You've either got to get a prototype done, or you need to get a very basic app prototype done, or you got to do something, right? And the question for a lot of founders is, where do we get that money? Now, in the space, there's this thing called a friends and family round. Friends and family rounds, typically, people go out all the time and raise $100, $500, $1 million in their friends and family rounds, right? So they're literally going to friends, family, friends of friends and saying, hey, this is what I'm building. Do you want in? Now, in communities where this concept is a little less foreign, you may be able to get some real money from that friends and family round. But in Black and brown communities, those friends and family rounds can be very tricky. Now, if your family doesn't have a whole lot, the likelihood of being able to magically turn a friends and family round into a 500K round, probably not going to happen. However, you can figure out how to get your first 5, 10, 15, 20K from friends and family if you think outside of the box. Okay, so typically when we think about friends and family rounds, we think about doing a typical pitch with a typical pitch deck with all of the keywords and all of the financials for a group of people that's less familiar with
savvy
the space.
With investing.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's going to be really intimidating, and they're going to say, what is this lady talking about? And they're going to leave and never give you a thing. But there's a way for us to do this creatively.
Okay.
So we may not be, and I got this from Shelley Bell before Shelley Bell told me that this was her concept.
Okay.
So in 2019, when I had run out of the funding from my home and from my 401k, I had to figure out how to get just a little bit more capital to go. I raised $25K, essentially throwing a business shower. So I said to all my friends who had the weddings and the babies, and I had spent all the money on all the things, I said, listen, I'm having a business shower, come. And so I had this business shower where I talk very high level about the vision that I am building and what I've been able to do and where we're going. You get people really hyped up. Folks in our community get that.
They get it.
Right?
Yeah.
No pitch deck, no financials, no fancy verbiage. Just, this is the vision.
Right.
And look what I've already been able to do. Right? And so that for me, that friends and family round, I think total, I was able to raise either 20 or 25K. I can't remember exactly off the top of my head. It's not a ton of money, but that was enough to bridge me until I had venture funding where we could actually commercialize our product. We got a lot done with that 20 or 25K. The patent that I have right now that girds all of the IP for my company came from that 20 or 25K.
Nice.
Our old website, we have that completely redesigned. What else did we do? We hired. We did a ton. And with that hiring, I was able to double, triple my manpower, right? Because now instead of just my 2 hands, I've got 6 hands. I can do exponentially more with that, right? And so if we take it back to the basics, if we take it back to level 100, before we do any of that VCs are going to want to know that other people
Other
have
people,
put
other people that know you.
other people that know you believe in you, right? That's a big invisible part of their calculation that we don't always think about. So think about that doing a friends and family round. You can do that by crowdfunding. You can do that by doing a business shower like I just kind of talked about. Omi Bell, Shelly Bell talks about rent parties except for your business, right? So there are lots of ways that we can couch it, but we have to think about culturally familiar frameworks that can allow people to be able to access this space.
I love it. I love it. All right. I hope you guys. This is like fun in jujitsu. Like you drop some real jewels here. All right. So the takeaway I'm thinking, to kind of close us out on this one is that, Fundraising 102 is a journey.
It is.
It's a journey. It starts. We didn't even talk about the 100, but it starts way before you want to actually get that check in the hand. You know what I mean? So think about raising money as something that you're going to start now and finish 24 months from now. You know what I mean? So think about it that way. The other thing I think was a really good takeaway is that the relationship piece of it.
100%.
Relationships and networks matter when it comes to raising money. Not just for the warm introduction, not just the 101 piece of it, but also for setting up what, eventually would be your seed round, your A round, your B round, your C round. Like you want to be building those relationships today. All right. This is a good chat, Dawn.
It's always a good chat.
All right, I'm Tremain Davis, and this is
Dawn Myers.
All right, we'll see you on the next one. Peace.